Hello everyone, it's Cassie. Welcome back for another Miss Ink Stamps video. Today we're going to be making an alcohol ink background, but let's talk about what we're using. First, I have this fortune teller stamp set. She's adorable. There are matching dies to go along with it. I don't have them. But we also have the Magic Speaks stamp set. This is great. It goes with all those magical stamp sets that Miss Ink carries. And so I'm excited to pair these two up. Should be fun. So let's go ahead and get started with our background. Now I have a piece of poster board, and I know that those in different parts of the country or different countries don't necessarily have access to poster boards. So Yupo paper is probably the first go, but poster board's a little bit cheaper, so sometimes I like to use this. It doesn't move the same as it does on Yupo paper, but it does work pretty well. The colors that I have are actually some of the new neons. So I have Hyper and I have Razzle. So Hyper's that really bright pink, and Razzle's this next one that I'm using. It's like almost like a purple, kind of a mix between those two. And if you've worked with the neons before, they are pigmented, and you'll know that. If you have not, they are, like I said, a little bit pigmented. And what I did is I started off using my blending solution, and I went from that upper left-hand corner down to that lower right-hand corner. I did want to keep some of the white showing, and I think that gave me a pretty good base. Now it does look like everything is just mixed together because there was a decent amount of that blending solution, but I feel like that was a good base to start with. And so now all I'm going to do is kind of try to make there be a little bit more definition between the colors and not blend so much like the blending solution did for me. So I'm going to slowly go in, and that blending solution will dry over time, and that will, aid in the colors being able to be a little bit more defined. And so I'm just grabbing. So going from the left to the right hand side, the colors that I used are Hyper, Fiesta, Razzle, Boysenberry, and Purple Twilight. So if you are looking to grab these same colors because they are beautiful together, I cannot get over how gorgeous those neons are, especially mixed with some of those other regular traditional type alcohol inks. And so as you'll see here, now that that blending solution has started to dry back, I am just grabbing some of those colors, dotting it down, adding a tiny bit of blending solution, and then I have this little alcohol ink air blower. I can't remember the exact name of it, but I'm just using that to kind of move the color around. I say magical backgrounds, at least I said that in the original description, because these kind of are magical by the time you're done with them. You get something different every time. I never get tired of playing with the alcohol inks. I haven't played with them for quite a while, but I feel like I've kind of opened up an excitement again for them. And I love the look you can get and how those colors blend together, but you can also get a lot of good definition on the edges, which is what I was going for here. And so I'm just going to slowly add tiny drops here and there, blend it around, and then we'll end up with something really quite pretty and very, very vibrant. And I'm so happy with how this turned out. Just absolutely gorgeous. All right, so I think I'm pretty much done there. So we're going to set this off to the side to dry, but take a look at that. It's still very, very wet. We need that to dry. And then I'm going to I'll clean up my glass mat, which you can just do with a little bit of water and a microfiber cloth. And then I'm going to go on to doing my stamping. Now, at the time that I set this off to the side, I wasn't thinking about adding any foiling to it or anything like that. But I do decide to a little bit later when I realize there's still a little bit of wetness. If I had really wanted to do that, I should have gauged a little bit better. And then I could have added more. And you'll see what I'm talking about when I get to it. But I've inked up my image using some Simon Hurley Create Black Widow ink. It's starting to become more of a favorite ink for me using my alcohol markers. And so I've got my Olos up there. I have a microfiber cloth. And the microfiber cloth is for some of those ink. My pens have a tendency, and I think anybody who uses Olos has noticed, that they are very, very juicy. Quite the opposite problem with some of the other alcohol markers that are out on the market. These ones get very, very juicy. You just have to keep an eye on your tip, because if you aren't paying attention, especially when you're using it in small areas, that ink really wants to come out, and you will see it kind of start to pool. And as it gets really like wet looking, that's when you want to wipe it on your microfiber cloth, which is what I did there a little bit ago. So now we're just moving on to the skin tones. I've put each of the colors up on the camera for you. And then we're going to move on to the rest of her outfit. After seeing the final card, you know that I just stuck with the same kind of colors that I did for our background. I love doing that. It adds a little bit of a simplicity to making the cards. You don't have to think too much about like a color palette. If you just want to get to creating, this is a simple way to do it. Just grab a couple of colors that are by each other. Monochromatic is always a good way to go too, but I just chose the pinks and the purples, and that's what I stuck with for her outfit, just pink and purple. And it really makes, that background really makes her pop, and I feel like it really, like her coloring really accents the piece that I made. So we'll finish up coloring her, and we've got some violets and those pinks. I'll bring the pinks in here in a second. And I really only grabbed 2 colors. She has smaller areas, so you don't need to go too in depth if you don't want to. And here I am grabbing that darker color and adding that on just for a little bit of shadowing. And then I'll realize that I don't want it to be too dark in areas, so I'm going to use a technique called tip to tip, where you just take the lighter marker and put it on the tip of your darker marker, and it'll pick up some of that color, and then you don't have too much of a crazy contrast. If you don't have all the colors that are out there, which I don't, I only have that first set that came out. I would have loved to have gotten the second, the next wave of colors. My husband did give me the okay to do it. I just couldn't bite the bullet on that one, especially with the move and everything else going on. So I just have those first original colors, but I love them. I really love my Olos. They are so much fun to color with. And yeah, so we're just going to finish up adding a little bit more darker pink or red violet to her, and then we're going to bring in some grays for the books she's carrying, and then also her little, I guess, magic ball. I forget what you call that. Words are hard. All right, and then I did fussy cut her out. So as you can tell, I did pull out some of those. This is the silver gilding flakes. This one's by Nuvo. You can tell my fan is on and it's blowing those all over. I suggest you turn your fan off before you get too crazy and make too much of a mess. And this is what I'm talking about. I wish that I had decided to do this a little bit sooner, because a lot of the areas that this gilding flake would have looked good on had dried already. So I do end up with a few of them, not a lot, but it does look pretty cool, and it would look even cooler if I had not waited so long. But isn't that pretty? Those gilding flakes work really well for that. Now this was originally 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I'm going to trim this down to be 4 inches by 5.5. So I'm going to keep it at 5.5 inches. I just want one little edge off the side. I cut down this purple cardstock to be about 1/2 inch by 5.5 inches. It's going to go on the far right hand side of my card base. My card base measures 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches and was scored at 4 1/4. So it's a side folding A2 size card. We'll add a little bit of glue to our purple piece, stick that down on the far right hand side, and then we can put glue on the back of our card panel, that beautiful alcohol inked card panel, and then we can add that to the left hand side and let that purple strip of cardstock really show. Makes more of the purple in the background pop a bit more. So I'll bring in the sentiment that I want to use. As you saw earlier, it says, "Another year older, how predictable." Super cute for a fortune teller. And so I'm going to just trim this sentiment down. Once again, I did use some of that Black Widow ink by Simon Hurley Create. And then I'm going to trim this portion down a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and glue her right to the sentiment. The reason for that is that I do want to add some foam tape behind her and the sentiment. And this just makes it a little bit easier, at least for me. So I just add a little bit of glue on that side, and then I stick her down to it. Then we'll pull both of those off. We'll cover that with foam strips, and then we'll peel off the release paper on those, and then we can just go ahead and stick both her and our sentiment down to the front of the card. And I don't add any embellishments. You could, maybe some silver would be fun in there, but I love how that turned out. We're going to stamp on the inside as well. Another one of those sentiments have an Exceptionally Ordinary Day. And then we're also going to stamp the little cat, and that's using some 100% juice on the front of our card, or the inside of our card, and that's going to finish off our card for today. So I love how this turned out. I hope you like it too. If you do, please hit that like button. Definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And be sure to check out all that Miss Ink Stamps has going on over on their blog, Facebook page, and Instagram for more crafty inspiration. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you soon.